You know how every once in a while, not often, but occasionally, you will have an out-of-body experience with a movie? Well, that's how today's film made me feel. Hey everyone, let's review Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma today, which was written and directed by Jane Schoenbrun. It's about a young and ambitious director named Chris, who was assigned the task of rebooting a long-dormant slasher franchise called Camp Miasma that had its heyday in the 1980s. She decides to travel to the Pacific Northwest and have a pitch meeting with the final girl of the first Camp Miasma film, and both characters go on a journey of self-discovery. When we talk about great voices in the movies in the 2020s, it seems most people are talking about people like Coralie Fargeau, Sean Baker, and Ryan Coogler, and they're all great. But why isn't Jane Schoenbrun included in this discussion? So this is written and directed by the same person who made two of my favorite films of this decade. We're All Going to the World's Fair and I Saw the TV Glow, the latter of which came out a month before I started this channel. But they are such a unique voice in horror that I feel doesn't get enough love. Once I found out they were making a third film, I looked up every theater in my state to find a showing for this picture. I drove 75 miles to see this movie, and that's a discussion I want to have with Mubi, the distributors of the film. You know there are cinephiles and film critics who live in the Rocky Mountains, right? How about making it easier for us to see films we are excited to see? What a novel idea. Anyway, what a year for horror films, isn't it? This may be the best year for horror I have experienced in over a decade. We're only in August, and I already consider this to be a golden year for horror movies, and here we go again. So what we have here is a picture that is looking to deconstruct the slasher genre, call out its hypocrisies while being a loving tribute to them, and also as a metaphor about coming out as who you are and what you are, embracing your sexuality, and feeling comfortable enough in your skin so you can experience pleasure. This is definitely one of the meatiest movies of the year with everything it wants to tackle. I was overcome with so many emotions by the end of me seeing this film, I did something I almost never do. I went outside of the theater, smoked a joint, thought about the picture for a little bit, realized that I don't believe I got everything. I then turned around, bought another ticket, and watched it a second time. The second time I watched it, I took a bunch of notes so I wouldn't forget specific things I wanted to call out in this review. The slasher series in the film, Camp Miasma, was a cultural phenomenon. It had at least 12 parts to it. At the beginning of the picture during the opening credits, it shows a bunch of VHS tapes stacked on top of each other, and I wrote down as many of the names as I could. Part 2 was called The Next Summer, Part 3 is 3D, Part 4 is The Curse of Little Death, etc. My favorites were Part 7 Psychic Warriors, Part 10 Medieval Miasma, and Miasma 3000. So nice to know that even this series got as ridiculous as the Jason films have. There's a video game they show that is very reminiscent of the Friday the 13th video game on the NES. This director did their homework and clearly loves horror movies. There's Day of the Week cards that pop up throughout the film, which is an obvious love letter to films like The Shining. This is all in like the first 3 or 4 minutes, by the way. When we start the actual film, we follow our main character, Chris, an intellectual who loves this horror series and seems excited to remake it. She states later in the film she plans on beating Hollywood at its own game because the series was her coming out party. She buys a DVD copy of Part 6 from a gas station and eats popcorn the exact same way I do. Take a box of Raisinets and put them in the popcorn. That is how you watch a movie. So every time we get a vista or background shot in this picture, we see this beautiful background of luscious sunsets, snow-covered trees, and so many beautiful things that look straight out of a Bob Ross painting. We see these backgrounds several times in the film, and it blew me away with how beautiful it all was. We meet the other character in this story named Billy, who is played by Gillian Anderson. She became a recluse after making the original Camp Miasma, but she isn't a loony hermit who is sucking on her thumb and acting nuts or anything like that. She's just a stoner who loves the quietness of nature. Chris becomes infatuated with her very fast, as they both seem to be drawn to this horror series like it defines both of them in one way or another. There's a sequence where they're eating fried chicken, and the camera does close-up shots of the dipping sauce being opened slowly and them eating the chicken. Was this a nod to Coralie Fargeau films, or was this a symbolic meaning that I may have missed? When Billy asks Chris about herself, she talks very high-minded about the philosophy behind these 80s slashers, and how they were queer representations of things, transphobic in certain ways, and she comes off as very collegiate, like she is trying her best to be the next Carol Glover, the one who coined the term final girl if you didn't know. And one of the best lines of the film is when Billy says to her that the films and slashers of that time as a whole were about two things: flesh and fluids. This is a great way to take the piss out of people who maybe have overanalyzed these films a bit too much over the last few decades, and I'm someone who loves the queer undertones in Freddy's Revenge, so I've done it myself too. Anyway, the first act is essentially just two people getting to know each other and bonding over things that seem to be unspoken by both of them. There's a running theme about candy that I haven't quite got the meaning of yet. There's a section where there are bags of candy in a basket hanging over a bed. Does anyone know what the symbolism of that is? I haven't caught it yet. In the second act, we watch the first Miasma movie with the two characters. Not the whole thing, but I say the first reel or two. We get to see Billy as a teenager. Well, actually, she was 24 playing an 18-year-old, but that's beside the point. That was a jab at how back then most of the teenagers who were played by people in their late 20s or even older. Hell, Sissy Spacek was 27 when she played Carrie. So this has been a strange problem in Hollywood for a very long time. So during this, we get the backstory of the slasher killer in the world, and we meet all of our favorite archetypes, but they are archetypes this film knows exist and pokes fun at. This is the funniest movie Schoenbrun has ever made. There's a lightheartedness in it that it wasn't present in their last two pictures. Now, if I were to be critical of anything in this movie, it would be a couple of things that are in the Camp Miasma film itself. The first is the look of the killer, who is called Little Death. He looks preposterous. Like if this film was actually made in the 1980s and he looked like he does in this movie, there is no way the series would have been as successful as the film is implying. He essentially is wearing a transparent bodysuit and a heating vent on his face. When I first saw him, I laughed at how ridiculous he looks. I'm sure that was intentional because this movie is so wonderfully made that it couldn't be anything but a joke. But I thought since he represents things such as repression, untapped sexuality, and killing your inner demons, I thought you could make him look a little less ridiculous. Imagine the vents on any of the ceilings of any grocery store or gas station you've been to and put it on the body of someone, and that's what he looks like. It is so silly. I also had an issue with one of the song choices in this film. Once the killer is on the loose and starts killing people, the song playing is A Long December by Counting Crows, and I love that song. I have that album on CD, but it was released in 1996 and the movie they are watching was made in the 80s. It did pull me out a little bit, but everything that happens during the song is amazing, so I guess I can't complain too much. All of the deaths we see in this film are done comedically and or artfully. If you're just looking for a slasher, you are probably going to be disappointed except during this second act. But what is here is fantastic. They even recreate the sleeping bag kill from Friday the 13th Part 7 and Jason X, except they use a javelin-like weapon and the killer bashes his victim against a tetherball pole over and over. It was glorious to watch. I loved it so much. I was smiling the entire time. This section where they are watching Camp Miasma is the most entertaining aspect of this picture on a pure popcorn fun level. Now, near the end of the second act and the third is when the film gets into what it's really about. I can't really spoil it because if I said exactly what happens, it wouldn't make any sense unless you watch the picture. But essentially it becomes a meditative homage to Wes Craven's New Nightmare as its blanket, while conveying things like embodying who you really want to be, finding pleasure from the forbidden parts of your mind, and ego death to accept the reality of who you truly are. This is where I worry it may lose many people. It almost lost me on the first viewing, which is why I went back and watched it a second time. I knew there had to be more to the last 30 minutes, and I'm glad I did because we witnessed a sort of embodiment role play kind of thing, as both of our characters accept their roles in their world and the world of the slasher they are both attracted to. There are a few supporting characters in the film, some executives at the movie company she was hired by, our main character's agent, her partner, and they are all present in the finale to represent our main character wiping away all traces of her previous identity and embracing who she really is. It's done in the veil of her wanting to become a victim in one of these slashers herself, and that plays into the erotic feeling she wants to embrace but feels she can't. I viewed it as a metaphor for coming out and also for enjoying life and pleasure in a body that you are not comfortable living in. If I read it wrong, please tell me, but that's how I interpreted it. Anyway, I really love this movie. This is one of the best films of 2026. The performances are amazing, the mise-en-scene is almost criminal with how wonderful it is, and there are so many deep and complex layers to this tale that I'm sure I will be unraveling them for many years to come. Not to mention the homages. Oh, by the way, there is a post-credit scene. Make sure you stick around and watch that at the end. This is one of those water cooler movies where you sit around with your cinephile friends and talk about all the meanings for hours on end. Will this be accepted by a mainstream audience? Fuck no. I wish it was, but I don't see the people who call Spider-Man Brand New Day the best movie of the decade loving this film. I hope I am proved wrong because this director needs to be seen by more people and accepted like their peers have been. So yeah, I obviously recommend this film. There are small things that irked me about it, but nothing that was deal-breaking at all. I was too absorbed in the beautiful art on display and the silliness that is randomly thrown out. This is a great movie, and I'm so glad I went and saw it immediately a second time. Now, Mubi, would you please release this to more theaters so I don't have to waste a whole tank of gas to see it a third time? That would be much appreciated. Thanks from Tim. I give Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma 4 stars.
Yay!
Man, there have been some serious bangers this year with this, Obsession, Backrooms, and Her Private Hell. What a year we are having. I hope people are able to see this film in the coming weeks. It deserves any film lover's attention. Great movie. And that is my review. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this, please like and subscribe. Here's links to my other videos. Follow me on social media if you like. And until next time, I am Ghost.